and welcome everyone to the Wakanda Daily Podcast. We was Kangs and shit.
We was Kangs, man. I don't believe that we actually have to inform people that Wakanda is not a real country. Apparently, that's a thing.
I don't know. Hotel Wakanda was a pretty intense movie.
Hotel Wakanda. Yeah, is that with Matt Damon?
No, that was the whitewash version. No, that was Don Cheadle.
Don Cheadle and Forrest Whitaker, because he's in everything now.
Yeah, Forrest Whitaker plays a really good dictator.
I'm sure he does.
African warlord dictator. Anyways, welcome everyone to the Shitlord Preachers live stream podcast. This is episode 13. We skipped a week, and we're back on the air today. This might happen from time to time. Just my name to start off. Actually, my name is Amos Joseph, joined by Brook Potter in the UK in London. So that is one of the reasons that possibly it's a little difficult for us to get our live stream on at least weekly, but every other week should be good enough, I'd say. We this is our weekly or bi-weekly live stream that we do. Brooke and I have been friends for a few years, and we used to be preachers, and through our experiences in the world of ministry and working and dealing with Christians and religion, we kind of moved away from that, and we started seeing a lot of similarities, interesting enough, in politics. So in our discussions that we had on a regular basis, we figured, hey, probably be a good idea to share some of these thoughts and ideas and discussions that we have in a somewhat more organized manner over the internet, through YouTube, as well as doing our own personal channels as well. Brooke and myself actually have not been doing too many videos lately, but we're definitely getting back on track with that. Right, Brooke?
That's right. That's right. Come on, exactly.
Man. So, once again, like I said, my name is Amos Joseph. This is Brook Potter. Brooke, introduce yourself.
Yes, to the wonderful internet peoples that are out there. This is fantastic. So those of you who don't know, my name is Brook Potter. I have actually been sick for like the last 2 weeks, coughing up all sorts of heinous nastiness that people don't need to know about. So that's a very big reason why I haven't been able to do the stream or do many of the video uploads. But I think I'm like 3 people away from 300 subscribers, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That's pretty epic.
I'm like 1 person away from 15.
Come on. Hey, we all got to start somewhere. Exactly. So like Amos said, I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. I've moved out to the UK, now residing in London. And I'm covering a lot of the issues that are out here in the UK and the stuff in Europe and stuff like that. And as Amos said, we used to be preachers, and the same sorts of cognitive dissonance and just basic denial of reality that we sometimes saw in our faith movement. We see a lot of that happening in the camps of politics, the left and right divide and such like things like that. And we just have some interesting opinions about some of the spin and some of the nonsense that's going on. All politics is basically nonsense. But so Amos and I have been. It's and it's never different, man. Like, I've lived in a couple countries at this point, and it's the same shit in every goddamn country that I go to. It never changes, man. So,
I've lived in a couple countries myself.
I don't know how it is out in Asia. I think the Asian mentality of the culture and stuff like that might be a little more conservative. But dude, it's just nonsense out here, man.
You got to think of it this way. Have you seen Taiwanese Parliament?
No. I would love to, though. I'm sure it is boring as fuck.
You want to talk about how every Chinese person knows kung fu and shit. In Taiwanese Parliament, fights break out on the regular.
Really?
Because people are very. I think it's kind of a. I think it's in some ways it can be a good thing. If politicians are serious enough about their cause that they will beat the living shit out of each other, I think there's it's a way to look at, like, hey, you have passion for the things you're doing. Over here, we just have lobbyists and and corrupt, bureaucrats that are just living it up with their fat checks and their perks and their lobbying, and they'll fight for their things. They'll go a little ad hominem, call people names, say stupid shit, but they're not gonna punch someone. I mean, could you imagine like WWE style fighting in the House chamber? Probably not, or the Senate chamber for that matter. No, you probably wouldn't. But in Taiwanese Parliament, you probably have that happen.
Well, again, because the U.S. is so trigger happy for lawsuits and stuff like that. I mean, they're just hoping that somebody would probably punch them and just cause a ruckus. I know there have been fights in the Italian Parliament in the UK, in Europe. I think is it Ukraine possibly? Even Toronto had a bit of a tussle when they had a mayor a while back who was like, he was using crack and
Rob Ford?
Yeah, it was Ford. That was it, exactly. That was actually quite a ruckus. The UK Parliament is too polite for that, but
yeah,
it does make for some interesting viewing, I have to say.
You guys might diss each other about like shitty tea or scones or something. But no, yeah. So basically, I guess we try to talk about a lot of different things here on the show. Sometimes it could be current events. Sometimes it could be a very specific topic. We're actually going to be exploring a kind of, an expanding of the show. We're going to be announcing here. I'll talk about it a little bit more towards the end of the show, but we're definitely going to be changing up the format depending upon different participants. We'll say that for now.
Yes. But you have a lot going on, man, and you have some stuff coming up as well in Minnesota. Like, what's going on?
So for those of you who follow, I guess, some of the similar people that I follow in the political realm, commentators and such, Ben Shapiro from the Daily Wire, who also used to be one of the editors over at Breitbart News.
Ben Shapiro wrote for Breitbart?
He was with Breitbart, yep.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. The reason he quit was because of the whole thing with Trump. Basically, Breitbart became sort of a token Trump supporting group, and they kind of liked the fact that they liked that Shapiro was not a Trump supporter.
Right.
However, there was something where he started to question Breitbart's journalistic integrity, and when it was something regarding a reporter where they were more for defending their reporter than to sort of stand up for the truth. And so once he saw that sort of breach of journalistic integrity, he said, "See you later. I'm going to do my own thing." And he has the Daily Wire, which hosts a couple different shows. One of them being the Ben Shapiro Show, one of the largest, if not the largest, conservative talk show in the country. But I will be going to go see him speak at the University of Minnesota here on the 26th. So that's a Monday. I've taken time off from work and everything to deal with to go to that. I will be actually, even for the event, I bought myself a little point and shoot camera to shoot video. Not going to do much for pictures, but doing some video. Going to be filming some of the Antifa Beyond All Means Necessary groups that are all going to be there. Sure to expect a whole lot more than when I was at the Lawrence Southern event last year. At that event, there was only about 100 plus attendance with about 200, 250 protesters outside, which I didn't actually come into any contact with at all. I actually got escorted around, well, not around them, just the way I entered into the building was avoiding them, and even afterwards we were escorted to completely avoid them. Got a little bit of footage from them from afar, from some vantage points on the campus, but yeah, that's coming up on the 26th. They're still kind of working out the finalized details since the U of M administration is kind of stonewalling, I'd say, the student groups. There's the Minnesota Republic group. There's the CFACT, which is, I think they're all conservative groups going at just slightly different visions that are on campus there, and they've been all working together to organize this event. And it has turned from, they wanted to set up the event in a more central location on campus, a very easily accessible location with bus routes, light rail, which is kind of the electric train, just all these public transport routes and main roads would intersect into the, sort of the center of campus. The administration, for the sake of security, did not want to have it in these locations and have pushed the event out to sort of a small venue that barely holds the initial 400 attendees. There were 400 people that they wanted to sort of do a first batch of tickets for, and depending on the event, they could secure they wanted to go further. While some of these venues hold up to 1,500 people, which were readily available, but for security reasons, the U of M denied them access to using those facilities.
Now, is U of M like a very liberal sort of institution? I don't know very much about the University of Minnesota, so for those who don't know. So
I think most universities, if not
sure,
all.
But I mean, like Berkeley is the big one, right? Berkeley is like leftist central. I mean, has there been any kind of protests?
There's definitely been a lot of talk about it. I haven't heard too. I mean, as we're leading up to it now, we're at about a week now. No, 10 days, sorry, I should say. 10, 11 days, I think, till the event. And we're going to start seeing some, the student groups are definitely monitoring the situation. They will be updating us, the attendees, with like, hey, this is the kind of thing we're facing. Like, they'll probably have pictures of posters, student, or even memos being sent out to student groups, if you want to call them that. I mean, basically, there's going to be protests organized for this event. Cool. And we're going to... Why do you think I have the camera? I'm gonna
man. Amos, if you get beat over the head and get like your 5 minutes of fame on like Fox News or something, remember to shout out your friends, right?
Yeah. In a way, I told some people it's probably kind of a messed up, I wouldn't say fantasy, but a messed up thing I would want to happen is I want them to post a list of known right-wing whatever people, like they're gonna have their if you see these people here, like they're absolute Nazis, and I want to be on there. Not that I want to be called a Nazi. I'm just saying
you are not famous enough to be a Nazi. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen.
I'm wondering if they're going to, because the video I did about the Lawrence Southern event got some views, and I'm if it was even enough of them from the college campus that are watching it, that it could get around, this is someone that we know is going to be recording, so. I
mean, you got a question in for the Lawrence Southern. Did you download the video, pull out your question, and upload that for
No, it was, no.
You should have done. You should have done a debrief, included your question moment in the video, and done that whole thing. I think that would have been really cool.
I think because it was put through a Facebook live stream, you can't really pull the video that easily.
Of course you can.
You probably could, but it was shot off like a camera phone that was super low quality. I would reserve my fame for my extensive question.
Being beat by Antifa to an inch of your life is definitely worth
and getting in my question with Ben Shapiro, because I think I've told you about. I have I'd say a very good question that I want him to really address.
Right. Are you going to give it away now, or are you going to wait until the big reveal?
I'm going to wait till the big reveal.
Right. Keep the viewers wanting more. There you go.
I mean, they're going to do it through the Young America Foundation, their YouTube channel, which they stream live. And that's going to be shot in very good, it's going to be shot in HD quality. So I'm going to really milk the time to get my question out there. Because it's a really good question that I've never heard Ben Shapiro ever talk about, but it's very relevant. To a lot of topics he talks about.
Sure.
and to really get a full, like, hey, not just like, I'm a student and what should I do about my liberal professors? Like, everyone asks that one because it's usually a lot of college students there. And it's like, I'm like, no, I will have a question about policy, government, all in one. So
right. I think I remember you mentioning the question to me. So it is a good question. I think it'll be very interesting.
I've been thinking about it more and definitely want to add in more facets to it to really like address like how would you confront this issue as from every angle that we can to really make change. So speaking of policy and making change, for those of you who probably do know, I think a lot of people know, there was a school shooting in Florida.
Yes. Very tragic.
And right off the bat, of course, like every other time, everyone jumps the gun and says, gun control. Right
Not
now.
everyone. Not everyone.
Well, not everyone. But, the voices that are out there are right off the bat.
So just walk people through what happened in Florida, and
a 19-year-old kid. What's his name here?
I mean, you can post the article later, but a 19-year-old kid.
19-year-old Nicholas Cruz basically went into school. Let's see, a high school that he actually graduated from in Parkland, Florida. He has been charged with 17 counts of premeditated murder. So he killed 17 kids, wounded 14, and 5 with life-threatening injuries, according to the hospital. He basically went in with a modified sort of an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle, went in there and did his whole thing. Now, right off the bat, everyone's of course trying to talk about gun control, Second Amendment. We need to ban these kinds of weapons, assault weapons, and as people have debunked the idea of the assault weapon, I think I even saw did you ever see there was a video with this guy? He basically he had an AR-15 in this video. He's at a shooting range and he's like, this is an AR-15. It is a weapon, that can be used for assault, but it can also be used for hunting. Yes. And he said, he goes, so he pulls out, this is a golf club. And he said, it is a normal golf club used for hitting a ball. Now, if I hit you over the head with it, it now becomes an assault golf club. So, kind of pointing out the fallacy of the idea of an assault weapon, because any weapon can be used for the purpose of assaulting someone. Now, obviously, there are weapons that are made for, that are clearly designed, like actual automatic weapons that are clearly designed for massive damage and killing. But within the, which are banned, unless you have a very, very special clearance and licensing to get, which you don't get. And if you do have something like that, it's probably, if you do have a weapon like that without the proper channels of getting, licensed, security clearance, you have to report that you own a gun like this to the government. Like, I own this very, very dangerous weapon for reasons, whatever reason they allow you to. Right. If you attain a weapon like this, if you get a weapon like this, you're breaking the law. And the thing with the whole thing with this argument is to say, we need to ban these weapons, these AR-15s, these AK-47. We just need to ban everything, ban all the guns.
The AK-47 is banned. That is a fully automatic weapon.
Right? No, I get that. I'm just saying it's like everyone the argument for gun control from gun control advocates is not based in reality. It's not based from a position of understanding weapons. Now, do I claim to understand weapons? No, but from hearing actually listening to the breakdown of how weapons and the Second Amendment and the laws and everything, how that all works in this country. You don't just get a gun to get a gun. There is no gun show loophole. Everything is a background check. Now, could there be more checks in place for guns? I think so. I mean, if you want to bring in the mental stability aspect of it. But see, the thing with this case in Florida was this guy was, I guess, already being watched by, I think, basically law enforcement was watching this kid before he even did this.
Right.
He posted a video saying he was going to do something. He had a website where he said, I'm going to be a school shooter.
Right.
And they dropped the ball.
Who is this? The police?
The police, yeah. They knew about this. And they dropped the ball.
Well, I mean, you can't do anything if somebody just makes the threat of, I'm going to be they actually have to do something.
And then here comes even the further question. Whose fault is it really? And I know whose fault it is. It's this kid's fault.
Right.
He shot the people. It's not the law's fault. It could be the law enforcement if you want to look at, okay, do they have a talk with him? Do they, maybe they don't arrest him, obviously, because you can't just arrest him on no charges. But hey, have a talk with him and say, hey, like, we're watching you. We know about this. Premeditation. I don't know. There's got to be a way that they could have, dealt with him. But at the same time, just because someone says they're going to do something and they don't do it, you can't really do anything about it until they do something. And the gun control argument doesn't take into all these things into account. Who, intent, obtaining firearms illegally, like.
How did he attain the firearm? Do we know?
No.
Okay.
They just did like a press conference today. But I mean,
So maybe explain to people where you stand on the issue of the Second Amendment and the whole gun control issue. I mean, do you agree that the Second Amendment is there for the tyranny of the state?
It is. It always has been, and it always will be.
Right.
the point of us having guns is not for hunting and not just but it's mainly for defense against tyranny. If the government decides, hey, like we've talked about this, the sort of, we talked about checks and balances in government itself among the three branches, but I think in a way the Second Amendment is sort of the check against government to say, hey, you can't just go into martial law and turn into a police state and take us over, because there are 300+ million guns owned by citizens.
Sure.
Because most people own, a lot of people own more than one. So if you take into account, even if half the population own more than one gun, some people that I've heard that own dozens of guns. Yeah.
Okay. So what is your experience with firearms? Have you owned a gun? Have you fired a gun?
I've fired a gun a few times.
Yeah. Do you know what kind of gun it was?
I know it was a rifle.
Okay.
It was. I mean, the bullet was. It was like what was it called? Pretty small bullet. I mean, it was at like a very basic sort of shooting range at a summer camp I went to.
Cool.
Very real gun. Basically, it's those like the handle and everything was wood.
Bolt action.
Yep, bolt action. So you had to like put in the bullet, pop it out. Of course, you want to be careful you don't pull out, and then the shell hits you like on your skin because it'll burn.
Right.
But and then we'd shoot at a target like 50 yards down.
Cool.
Which I did okay at. I started kind of figuring like lining up the sight and all that stuff, but I've never gone through any full like gun safety training. I probably would love to, at some point.
It's a good idea.
And possibly go through the process of owning a firearm and probably only ever owning like a handgun. Just just to go through the process and to just have that, and I, hoping to never ever have to use it.
Sure, sure. I mean, I think a firearm is very much it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it sort of situation.
Right. And it's like, and like I'm saying, I'm getting a handgun. I'm not going to go all like crazy.
So you're not going to go like, Confederacy, get an arsenal going, prepare for the next Civil War.
Right. Get my Confederate flags out there. I get a big old safe with a flag on it.
Come on.
No. I got to get a Kekistan flag on there.
Probably, the handle will probably have you could get customized handles on some of these guns.
Oh, Jesus.
I mean, I would love a Desert Eagle .50, which is the Israeli gun. I mean, that thing's got a kick in the ass, man. But
that's a big ass handgun.
That's a big ass. I don't have my hands, Asian hands, so I don't have very big hands. But that is one kick ass machine.
I've seen, or even like a Beretta.
Yeah, I mean, I think I fired a handgun. What was it? A 38. I can't remember the make. I think it was a Remington. I fired the shotgun, and I fired the AR-15, which was really fun. And that was all in my time when I was out in Kansas. We had a mutual friend out there whose family had the arsenal. Like he was ready to hop the border to Texas and fight for independence, sort of thing. He was awesome.
Oh yeah.
And he had bombs.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah. I think there's a picture of. Yeah, he had smoke bombs and makeshift grenades and stuff like that, all locked away. But he was serious. He was a serious contender, and I had a lot of respect for him. I mean, he was Americana as far as I was concerned. He was really, really awesome.
Americana as fuck.
Yeah. And then the guy I was staying with, he got a handgun. And there was a very funny incident because, again, he doesn't understand the language. And I was holding the handgun, and he says it's not loaded. And I pulled it back, and I was talking to somebody on the Skype, and I was really tempted to pull the trigger. And he said, "No, you just loaded it." And I was like, bro, when you say it's not loaded, it means there's nothing in the fucking clip, right? That's not what that means, right? And that really freaked me out. I was inches away from firing that off. And, but again,
oh my gosh,
he didn't understand the language and stuff like that.
Do I remember? No, I know who. Of course I know who you're talking about. I've been to that house. That would have been funny to see that hole in that roof.
Yeah, it was fucking hell, man. That really scared me though. That really freaked me out that he didn't understand that.
So when I was in Texas, when I lived there, the people that I was working with out there, they had quite the arsenal of weapons too. In the main guy, we'll just say that the main guy's house.
Yeah.
He had a few weapons, and for someone who preaches what he preaches with all his weapons, I thought it was kind of funny. I mean, we were in the middle of Thanksgiving, and he just pulls out these guns, and he's just just showing it off to the other guys. Yeah, I got one of these. I got a couple of these back there, and I got this is really cool here. And then they're showing pictures of these different guns, and I'm like, okay, well, they're real Texans down here.
And he was in the military too, right? He was,
I think so, yeah.
Trained. Yeah. I think if I recall, he did serve a stint in.
But it was just that was wow, all these guns. And I just walk right by and they're just right there, and I'm just showing them, and I'm like, there's people and there's kids everywhere. Just look at this gun.
I mean, it's very different out here. Obviously, guns are not as prolific out here. We have acid attacks, stabbings, trucks of peace. We got these other things.
Big ass Legos.
Yeah. Merkel's Lego and stuff like that. But something that I attended recently, you had your Lawrence Southern. I actually attended the Libertarian of the UK, the national convention out here. And the morning session was basically 4 members, and then there was an evening session which was kind of open to the public. And I'm going to do a full video on the debrief of my time at the Libertarian Party. I've just been under the weather. But we had a guy that actually came there advocating for gun rights. And he talked about how the UK for a very long time was fully loaded. Like, you know, it was a lot of farmland and stuff like that. And everybody had a rifle. And, you know, the kids used to shoot on the schools and, you know, defend the empire was a very big thing. And it's only up until about the 1950s that they actually started to implement these national bans. Now, they don't have a lot of bans for shotguns and rifles and other things, ironically, because, you know, the hunting and stuff like that is very big out here. Handguns, yes, there are a couple of restrictions, but the AR-15 is actually available out here in the UK, as well as the Uzi, which I might be wrong, but it's pretty damn near fully automatic, right? So there are a lot of things out here that you can get. I mean, there's a lot of red tape. You got to do all the checks and stuff like that. But I was actually quite surprised at what is available out here. Now, if you do see the regulation, it's so silly. So they basically categorize a rifle as a certain length, like a shotgun and a rifle it's supposed to be a certain length. So anything smaller than that is categorized as a handgun. So what the people do?
So a sawed-off shotgun is a handgun?
Yeah, well, no, that would be banned. So what they do is they attach this wire to the end of a handgun to extend its length, basically to categorize it as a shotgun. It is the most ridiculous loophole that I have ever seen. So it's a handgun with a piece of wire sticking out of the end.
It's like
and that is how they
here's
get
my
around
gun. Here's my handgun, but I'm gonna take this big piece of PVC pipe.
And yeah. That's kind of what they do.
That's my shotgun now.
No, yeah. I don't know a lot about it and stuff like that. I do know it has to do with the regulations of shotguns and rifles. It's based on length. So they extend the length of the gun and reclassify it as a shotgun.
So if I take this thing here, this phone, and I put it on
stick an antenna on it.
No, and I put on my tripod. It is now a broadcast TV camera.
Right. That's and you're subject to BBC TV licensing. But that's really what they do. Now, I as I say, I'm definitely a supporter of self-defense. I think defending yourself and your property is a fundamental right, and I don't think the government really has the right to infringe upon that right.
Right.
I mean, there's two schools of thoughts about that. There's some people say the rights come from the state. I'm definitely a person who believes in intrinsic rights. In fact, you did a video and you actually made that point that the state gives rights, and I actually disagreed with you. But yeah, I think to be able to defend yourself and your home is the most fundamental right. So
the thing about rights, though, is the position of belief where the state gives rights is the wrong position.
I would agree.
Because people nowadays, you know, when we're passing these laws to sort of expand civil liberties, so gay marriage and so on, it's being perceived as, oh, the state gives us the right, and it's like no. Well, I mean, technically yes, but
how is that tech? Yes.
Well, I'm just saying is, if you want to look at law and everything, like I'm saying, here's what just let me finish the point on that.
Sure.
Technically, yes. However, that's not how it's supposed to be. I think you have a, you know, when we, you know, we've sort of understood the state as, you know, they are the beginning of all rights given, whereas in reality it's it's the rights that we've been granted. Like we should have all the rights that are granted to us, inalienable rights.
No, I disagree. I think even if you look at your constitution, the rights come from the creator, right? So
right, okay,
all men
I get what
all
you're
men are
saying.
created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. So the rights, and I mean, you could look at many constitutions. Trinidad and Tobago has a constitution. It comes from the creator. I mean, the UK doesn't have a constitution, so I can't really.
What was the point of the Civil Rights Act and
right? The Civil Rights Act are there to protect the inalienable rights, which is what the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. But the Constitution, the purpose, and this is a very fundamental, argument people make. A constitution, by nature, is there to restrain the state.
Well, no, I get that.
Yeah, some people disagree. Right, but I think we agree on that. That the role of the Constitution is to restrain the state. So the idea is that people are free, and they've elected to have some body of governance, but the governance must only operate within these parameters, which is the role of a constitution.
The thing I was saying was more so people tend to think like here's all the rights, and here's the rights we have, and every time the government passes a law, we get a little bit more of what we truly deserve as rights. That's how people tend to perceive. Whereas I see it as we have all these rights. Like we started with all this. And as time has gone on, depending upon interpretations of the Constitution, through the Supreme Court cases, different laws that have passed, this has sort of changed to meet the needs that arise as time has gone on. And what has happened now is people have sort of misunderstood this compared to this, and they and they think, oh, we never in let's say 1800s, would you have had the right, would gay people have the right to get married?
Well, yes and no. The state wasn't involved in marriage back then, so
okay,
it really. Right.
Let's say like
let's not mistake a right and a privilege, right? There are two different things. So
right.
I have the fundamental right to protect myself, self-defense, right? That's a fundamental right. But the right to drive a car, for instance, that's a privilege, right? Because I'm using the roads and all this other stuff, right? And that's a little different. I mean, I agree that, I mean, if I buy the fucking car and I'm paying, for it, it's mine. I should have a right to drive it, but that's a whole other argument.
We talk about that.
Yeah, and actually, there was a Supreme Court verdict in the U.S. where they actually said the driver's licenses are unconstitutional, which is anyway. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but yeah. So the normal understanding, the classical liberal understanding, is the rights come inherently from divine right, some outside source. In the UK, it comes through the crown, so divine right comes to the monarch, and the monarch has delegated those rights, to the parliament and these other things. So we have divine right in that sense. Your constitution also has divine right in the sense of inalienable rights, fundamental rights, freedom of speech, protection, and all these other things. And like you say, we had a lot more, and over time, this states and, well, in your case, the federal government has been encroaching more and more and getting more and more involved in things that it really has no right to do.
Well, yeah, it's starting to, you start having, I mean, even if I went up to, let's say, Thomas Jefferson and said, do you think men should be allowed to marry each other?
You're asking to know the mind of Thomas Jefferson.
No, but I mean, here's what I'm gonna go. Where I'm gonna go with that.
Yeah,
they probably didn't have that issue, so it wouldn't be relevant. It'd be like some far out issue where it'd be like, wait.
And they didn't have a income tax. Like a big reason to get married is tax advantages, right? There's a very good economic incentive for people to get married, right? So they get married and they file joint taxes, and all the bills are cut in half, all this kind of good stuff. But of course, that wouldn't have been an issue back in the 1800s because you didn't have the IRS, you did not have income tax.
Well, that's homophobic,
right? They didn't have any of these benefits, so the only reason to really get married was procreation, practicality. You needed to pop out some kids to work on the farm and to take care of you. It was very more pragmatic. And I don't really think they would have given a crap or a shit about two men shacking up. Now, there were a lot of religious connotations, and I'm not saying there wasn't oppression and stuff like that. Like out here in the UK, up until the 1950s and 60s, being homosexual was a castratable offense, and they would chemically castrate you if you were homosexual.
Alan Turing.
So, exactly, Alan Turing. So I'm not saying that it's great, right, or that they had more liberty.
But I just think as time has gone on, different moral and religious connotations have been mixed into different ideas, and as society has progressed to be more liberal than conservative as time has gone on, people have been given the idea that sort of the state is giving rights to people instead of realizing that we're basically reevaluating what our rights are in the first place, I'd say.
Correct. And I mean, a good example of that is things like, what was it? Is it the affirmative action laws of the 1960s? Or by the AMA, which is like the disabled people's sort of, they can't be discriminated against and stuff like that. People have this idea, especially in the United States, that the government passes laws and then suddenly, boom, these things come into effect. So like a big one is the Obamacare. The left is screaming about the repeal of Obamacare, thinking that all of a sudden we're going to fall back into the dark ages in the US for healthcare. They're going to eradicate the hospitals and doctors as if healthcare suddenly popped into existence.
Bloodletting, leeches.
Right? We're going to go back to bloodletting and leech. No concept that there was healthcare even before Obamacare. So a lot of the like equal pay, anti-discrimination laws, the anti-disabled people think these things suddenly popped into existence and suddenly there was all this equality and all this other kinds of stuff, not realizing that legislation tends to trail society. So it was because we were starting to see public outcry, and so like society shifted, and they wanted all this equality and they didn't want segregation and all these other kinds of things. A lot of that came into effect first, and then laws were passed afterwards. Now, not everywhere, like the Jim Crow laws and stuff like that, of course, there was a lot of protests and other things. But legislation tends to lag societal norms. So even not that long ago, the whole issue about gay marriage in the US, it's a very recent thing, right? The Supreme Court only issued that out it was under the Obama administration. So it's only within the last 8 years. I don't know exactly where it is. But a decade before that, it wouldn't have passed. Like there was no legislation or anything to support gay marriage. And even still, there isn't legislation to support gay marriage either because it was done by government fiat. The Supreme Court ruled on it and just said, well, you can't discriminate about this at all. So even that is a result of social pressures, coming from the people. And in the case of gay marriage, for instance, I don't actually think there is any kind of gay marriage legislation. It's just government, the judiciary is actually legislating on behalf of the people.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
it's complicated.
But see, we're having this conversation, and the rest of Twitter is blowing up, saying stupid shit like it's easier to buy a gun than it is to vote.
That's clearly not true.
We need to just gun control right now. Like Congress just needs to pass a law, no matter how ridiculous and crazy it is. Fuck reading it. Just pass a law on gun control and just get it done with. Because too many people, because like you said, pass the law and shit's just going to happen. Like guns are going to, poof and disappear.
Remember when they made drugs illegal and all the drugs in the U.S. disappeared? Remember that? Oh, that was such a good day. Yeah, it was such a wonderful day.
Like people were trying to mix stuff from pharmacies with illegal drugs to make meth, and it just wouldn't happen.
Yeah, it was just like magic.
The chemical reactions just wouldn't happen.
Someone
I follow on Twitter. Someone I follow on Twitter put up a poll. They said, "How do you expect gun control to deal with I think it was saying like 150 million guns in the black market that is available to the U.S. What do you think gun control is going to do to that?" And there was like 4 options, and I got to look it up here quick.
I'm sure it was like nothing, and nothing.
he did it a little more creatively. Let's see here. What was it?
I mean, while you're looking that up, I could talk about what happened in Trinidad and Tobago because we have a surge of crime.
For people pushing for tougher gun laws,
can you share the poll on, or is it on your phone?
It's on here. Basically, just said for pushing for tougher gun laws, how do you expect to get 150 million guns and assault weapons off the black market? And here's the 4 poll options: wave wand and poof, it's gone. People will give them up. 150 million illegal guns is a total lie. Or go ask the gangs for them. So wave of the wand and poof, it's gone, and go ask the gangs for them were the 2 top ones.
It is total fantasy land that these people are living in, believing that some kind of legislative fiat is just suddenly going to solve all of these problems. So, I mean, I don't know enough about the shooting, and it is a terrible thing. Every victim of any kind of shooting, gang-related, mass shooting, whatever the case might be, it's a terrible tragedy.
And the whole argument, too, was I got into a discussion. You probably saw what I posted. I basically, on my Facebook, I was saying I said, politicizing the school shooting is one of the worst political tactics to push an ideology. I think.
I agree.
People were like, well, it's got to stop happening then. I said, well, yeah, but I said, think of it. I said, you can have your laws, you can have your discussion, you can have your debates and policies and changes, but chill out. Like, don't just jump the gun and be like, like I said, are you really going to go to a drug addict that OD'd on something that's dead at his funeral, go up to his parents and be like, well, drug addiction is a real problem in this country, and he was part of the problem. Like, you're not going to say that shit. You're not going to be like, well, like you should start an activist group for your son because he died. And it's like, no. Give it a day or 2.
Right.
Because even like people were saying, like, there was even some really insensitive stuff. Because a lot of the shooting was actually on Snapchat, believe it or not. Really? Kids were Snapchatting this. They didn't. I mean, there was no one actually, like, there probably was video of people dying in the Snapchats. They wouldn't show that. But someone like wrote on Twitter, some profile was like, well, instead of Snapchatting all day, why didn't you kids just call 911?
Right.
And that's true. But then someone else like jumped in and was like, 17 of my classmates died, and this is what you're going to say to them?
Yeah, it's kind of a dick response. And I'm sure somebody called 911 because he is in custody, right? The police showed up.
Yeah, they got him and everything. Like, there is, the school went into the proper procedures that have been put in place for school shootings, which is lockdown. They basically, the entire school, all the doors lock, everything is latched, and the kids stay away from all doors and windows.
Right. Yeah. And
that's, I mean, and of course there's talks about, like, conceal and carry among teachers, like if you had like sort of a school defense squad of teachers with guns.
I think that's a good idea.
Give
completely voluntary. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, you give basically a handful of teachers whose identities are only known by, like, the principal. Yeah. And they keep sort of a gun locked away in maybe some sort of drawer or something in the classroom that is only accessible by them.
Yeah.
No one knows where they are. And in the event of a shooting, they can get the gun, or they can basically or protect the students that are in their class. So let's say, let's say they have basic training to basically get together and, subdue a shooter, contain the problem.
Totally voluntary. I think it's probably the best idea. I mean, even out here in the UK, when we had an incident outside the Parliament building from somebody, is that you?
Oh, that's me. Yep, that's me.
Is that you?
Oops.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, we had an incident outside the Parliament building, and a guy in a truck was, he was gunning for it. He was like really going for it. And it took a policeman to subdue him. Either, I don't know if he shot him or a taser or something like that. Had he not done that, the incident would have been so much worse. Now, again, I am definitely for self-defense and these other kinds of things. There is a reason that mass shooters attack schools. And for a large part, it's easy targets, instant fame, instant notoriety. They're going to get a book deal, maybe a movie deal or whatever. It is far too easy for these people to use this event if they're looking for infamy, some kind of fame.
Yeah, gun-free zones.
Yeah, so there's a reason they don't attack a gun show or any of these other kind of facilities, right?
I would love to see it.
If it is that you're young and disenfranchised with society, and you might idolize I don't know, some of the other mass shooters that have been out there, it's too easy. It's too easy. So you need to have a deterrent. And as I was saying, like the incidents in Trinidad and Tobago right now, there's a huge crime spree that's taking place, and I was part of the petition. A couple of people had petitions to basically relax the firearms legislations to arm the population. Now we have it's a huge drug and gang issue, and there are, for such a small island, we have like 1,000 murders a year. It's out of control. It's just absolute chaos, and a lot of people are getting caught in the crossfires and stuff like that. And the only option you have is to call the police, and in Trinidad, that's like doing nothing for the most part, because most of them don't have vehicles. They don't really rush out to these sorts of things unless it's like absolute carnage or something like that. So yeah, we needed to relax those laws, and as I say, I think the idea of arming a section of teachers completely voluntary. We do it on planes. We have sky marshals on the plane. That one person who has a firearm and they're on the flights and whatever the case might be. It's just common sense. And I would ask the advocates for gun control, what legislation would they put in place that would actually prevent any of this?
Well, they always point to the more radical policies of like Australia or something. The gun recall.
Right, and the Australian gun recall actually didn't reduce that many incidents. And it actually didn't get that many guns, right? I think like 1/3 of the guns in Australia actually got turned in. So 2/3 are still out there, especially in the outback and other places. So it's not the best example.
But man, all those school shootings in the outback.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. They quote the UK. Yeah, but we had a soldier that was bludgeoned to death in the streets with basically a Chinese chopper. And it was caught on video and everything like that. And, we have our other issues. Even in China, one of the biggest police states that there is, they have people just going on mass stabbings in the schools. So what you get is, okay, you don't get mass gun shootings, but it doesn't mean you don't get mass, killings in other kinds of capacities. It's the gun just makes it more efficient if that's the case. But the only thing that's going to stop them in the short term is somebody else with a weapon. I don't know, man.
So what you're saying is,
for those who don't know, who might watch this many years later, that's a reference to the Jordan Peterson interview. Yeah, Kathy, right, on BBC, is ITV Channel 4. So for posterity, go and look up that video to know what he's talking about.
So what you're saying is all men are shooters.
Right. All men are mass shooters.
I got on to that whole a little bit of that discussion today on Twitter. I was saying, because here, and I'm just mocking, of course, the gun control hysteria is. I just wrote in all caps: guns, 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 NRA, 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 Trump, 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 white, white, white. Toxic masculinity. Because those are all the reasons why this shooting took place. Even though the guy was, I think he was Hispanic. He was already a mentally disturbed person. All these things contributing to do this. I mean, there's so much that could be said about all these different factors that play into it. I mean, Americans in general are just as much as I think I truly believe we're the greatest country in the world. Our people have so many issues going on.
Sure.
And
especially the young people.
Yeah, with this mass hysteria with Trump, with this mass just oppression, pity party of sort of this leftist idea that, all these people are oppressed. I mean, who's to say what was going on in this kid's head being Hispanic in a Trump America, reacting under some sort of pressure or something? And another thing too that people don't really talk about too much is sort of this need for significance. There's such a push in collective ideas, sort of a collectivist ideology, that people lose their sense of significance, and in an effort to try to become more significant, they do crazy things. You have Antifa, you have school shooters, you have just
Tide eaters,
Tide Pod nonsense. and then you start getting random things like, we need to push radical gun control now. We need to pass laws on making Tide Pods less appetizing looking.
How stupid is that? That's not going to address anything.
Exactly. Jeez.
Yeah, it's the need to be famous, right? I mean, the need for significance, as you say. It is a driving force, especially in this day and age with social media and just all the shit that comes with it. And I mean, let's be real. I mean, you and I are both on YouTube, which is a social media platform, and we're trying to make a name for ourselves. I mean, I can't even say that we're entirely immune from this. And I mean, this is just what it is. And if you get a certain amount of followers and stuff like that, you could actually make some money. You could make a living off this.
And you and I have talked about this a few times. Even like, how are we like? It's a matter of the right timing and catching on to some sort of news thing, posting something, doing some video that's just going to catch on, because we do put in time, an amount of time to put out content and stuff. At some point, something can happen where we achieve some sense of exposure, and like, okay, how are we going to handle this? Are we going to get involved with drama? Are we going to do stupid shit?
I mean, you can, right? I'm so over. I'm not interested in internet drama, right? This one feuding with that one, Sargon versus the alt-right. Fuck it, I don't give a shit, right? Because people are entitled to their opinion, and what's the point of arguing with these other people from a video they can't respond to? I'd much rather have the discussion.
Right.
But drama, I'm not interested in. Like, I could pick shit with a lot of people, and I could like take an argument and like break it down. But I do it with public figures. So like, I've done videos on Theresa May and her cannabis comments. I've done it on Jeremy Corbyn and some of the crap that he said. So I pick the public figures and I will critique them. And those videos have done pretty well. I've critiqued the situation in Trinidad and Tobago, some of the economics. Those have been my best videos. I mean, I've done my dating stuff. Some people are interested in that, not so much. And then there's this, like, it's like this stream, I'm sure it's going to have a title referring to the unfortunate shooting and stuff like that. Very relevant, very relevant. It might actually be kind of fruitful to maybe look at some of the arguments that, these gun control advocates are espousing and maybe kind of debunk them a little bit. But yeah, I mean, this is what it is. And especially since we're about to both be demonetized because we're, minuscule and meaningless in the YouTube universe, we need views. Maybe I should start a gaming channel. To get the views up, man. I mean, what they're asking for is ridiculous.
Yeah, you gotta play some like super.
We'll get some Civ going. Those are long games because we need the viewership, right? But yeah, so what is the big argument from the left that more guns equals more gun violence? Let's tackle that.
Yeah,
What do you say?
well, I mean, there's basic arguments like more guns equals more gun violence. America has sort of a gun happy culture because of our Second Amendment. Um,
You definitely
there's,
have a gun happy culture. I don't think that there's anybody denying that, but that doesn't
but they
equate.
say that contribute. They believe that contributes to it. I mean, there of course there's always the gun show loophole fallacy. There's always the
Let's take them one at a time. Let's take them one at a time. So the gun show loophole. I know that's a talking point for the left in the
gun
United
show.
States.
Basically, it's the idea that you can go to a gun show that has zero background checks or information. And you can just buy a gun. You know,
Right.
I could drop $2,000 on a decent gun at a gun show. They don't have to check anything. I just get it.
Okay.
That is false. Any gun and any sale at any gun show ever in the entire 50 states,
Right.
you have to do this. You have to go through background checks. You have to fill out the paperwork. You have to have proper ID. You have to be, you have to have the proper licensing, the permits, all that, gun safety training, all that stuff. You don't just do that. If you guys go look, Steven Crowder did a whole video on it where he went to gun shows and was like, "Can I just get a gun?" And they're like, "No." And he's like, "But the gun show, loophole." And they're like, "There's no such thing. Like, we will not give you a gun. Period."
Right.
Well, he's like, "I got money right here." And they're like, "No, you don't just get a gun." Now, can you get a gun illegally? Of course you can. You can get a lot of stuff illegally.
I do actually know what the loophole is, though.
What is the loophole?
Not at the gun shows, though. I do know the loophole because I witnessed it.
I mean,
In
you
some
go on.
states, I don't. Yeah, the private sale market for guns, there is no real checks for that, and some people can gift you a weapon in some states. That is
Yeah,
actually
and see, you look at this. They want to advocate. They want to push for laws to address these issues. When in
right.
reality, the laws in place get broken already that protect the very things they want protected. Well,
Yeah,
we gotta people can't buy fully automatic weapons because they can't.
correct.
Well, people shouldn't be able to modify their guns to make them automatic because
That's
they
already
can't.
illegal. Yeah, that's
That's already
already
illegal.
illegal.
Well, people shouldn't buy guns at gun shows without proper paperwork because they can't.
That's already taken care of. Yes.
Yeah. Well, well, mental health should be taken into account to a background check. Okay. One big issue with that. Just because someone looks a little weird doesn't mean no, we're not going to give you a gun. Unless you've committed a crime or you're on some sort of watch list. And if you've gone through all the proper training and paperwork and you have no criminal record, you could probably get a gun, very likely.
Yeah, until you've actually violated some kind of law, and there's nothing there, more than likely you can get a weapon.
It is the same thing for, let's say, so I used to be a pizza delivery driver. I had to have a certain kind of driving record in order to be authorized and allowed to drive and deliver for pizza. If I don't follow certain requirements, I don't work there. I don't do that job.
Correct.
So, and it had to be a very specific set of things, like if it was a speeding ticket. But if I had parking tickets, they're not going to care. But if I had speeding tickets, reckless driving charges and stuff, they're like, no. Yeah, they're like, no, you're not driving for us. So there's reasons, there's laws, there's systems in place that already protect a lot of these things. Now, just because let's say, I go to a place and I have no driving, I don't have any bad driving record, it's clear. But I decided to, but then I just look like a little bit of a weird guy. And I do my job. And then next thing you know, I mow over 15 people one day because I just had it with the pizza delivery industry. Now,
there's nothing that could stop that.
Is there any? Yeah, is that the fault of driving laws? Is that the fault of my employer? Is that the fault of any sort of system in place that was to prevent what I did? No,
No, there's nothing that could stop that. Because you're under the radar until you're not, right?
But I was driving this one specific brand of car with this specific make that had these specific specifications, so it was all that car's fault.
Let's just ban those cars.
Ban those
Exactly.
cars. Exactly.
Ban those cars.
You know, I mean, and that's
Oh my goodness.
and that's the whole that and see that's this sort of thinking is creeping into other aspects of how we're looking at laws and society and just technology in general. They're afraid that what if a self-driving car kills someone? How many
Right.
people driving cars kill someone?
Well, I mean, there has been a death from a self-driving car that ran into a tractor. I mean, this is in Florida. The technology did not recognize the tractor, and it smashed like right into it, and the guy died. So that is coming, right?
Right, that is definitely coming. But if like I think it's like there's like 30,000 car accidents a year or something, deaths.
Yeah, more people die from pretty much car accidents than a lot of other things.
So there's like 30, maybe I don't know, it's like 30 plus. I've looked at the statistic. 30,000+ people die from car accidents every year. And it was like around the same number that people die from gun-related incidents too.
Sure.
And it's like we don't see any ban on cars. We don't really see any major shifts in traffic violation, policy and stuff.
Correct.
I don't see some big march at, any capital of any state going, we need to make this stricter on. I mean, you hear like an offhand comment every now and then, someone talking about changing the drinking age because other countries have lower drinking ages. But you're not going to hear someone go like, we need to put more safety restrictions on cars.
Right. I mean, they do have a lot of lobbying groups to try and make cars safer.
Yeah, make cars safer, obviously.
Yeah. So there's that. But like you say, I mean, the same argument can be used for cars. If it is that you want to ban all guns because, okay, yes, a couple people have used guns for terrible things.
And they talk about there's all these school shootings now. There's been like, apparently there was one in Minnesota. I didn't even remember. Every couple of weeks you hear about some sort of school shooting, big or small. And lockdown procedures, that was a new thing that happened when I was in school. That policy came into play while I was in school. When I was in they started saying, okay, we're going to have this new thing called a lockdown procedure. What? And I said, yep. There will be a very random sounding alarm go off. We will turn off all the lights in the entire school, lock all the doors. Everyone hides away from doors and windows.
Right. It's something. It's definitely something. But it's kind of the same thing like what used to happen in the Cold War when somebody would hijack a plane. The procedure used to be agree with the hijacker. So some people jump on a plane and, it's some communist uprising. They're going to take the plane to Cuba and negotiate for the release of the hostages. And they're going to get, some money, some guns, whatever it is that they want, political prisoners released and stuff. So the policy of the airlines used to be just comply with the hostages. Then 9/11 happened, right? And now planes have been weaponized, right? It's no longer comply with the hostage takers because this shit is different, right? This is no longer.
We put cops in the sky.
This is no longer business as usual. This is not Cold War hijackings for some money or political prisoners. This is acts of terrorism. So sky marshals are up, steel doors in the cockpits, just a whole bunch of new procedures. And I mean, some of the very, very brave people on the United flights, was it 73 or 93 or something, rose up and they took out, their kidnappers, and the plane crashed, tragically. But yeah, it's not the same. And if you're not going to address one of the major underlying contributing factors to why school shootings take place, which is the ease of which it could happen, because there's no deterrent. If you're not going to address that, you're left with duck and cover, right? And if you care about students, and I mean, I think I care about students, you would do everything in your power to make a school as a deterrent to any kind of school shooting as possible.
Right.
Banning guns is a pie in the sky. So I mean, okay, so we addressed the gun show loophole, and you say Crowder did a video about that. You can probably put a link to that below.
Yep. So what's the other one?
We still haven't addressed the one I was talking about, which is, more guns equals more violence. And that is clearly not the case. And the flip side of it is also true, that high gun control does not necessarily mean less violence, as we've seen in places like Chicago, Detroit.
Strongest gun laws in the entire country are in Chicago, yet it sees some of the highest gun violence.
Right.
Regular basis. People are dying every single day in that city.
Yeah. And then you have the reverse, where very lax gun laws, I think like Vermont, so Bernie Sanders' state, actually, it's ironic, has some of the, it's not easy, but some of the most liberal gun laws, and they have some of the lowest crime. I think they rank, in terms of, state by state, one of the safest, if not the second safest or something like that, of the states. And I mean, I could attest to that even further. New Zealand has a very armed population, very low gun crime. Switzerland is armed to the teeth, very low gun crime. Sweden, Norway. I mean, there are a lot of European countries that are armed to the teeth, because for the most part, the population is the army, right? Switzerland has, you serve conscription and all these other things. And these have a very, very low, gun-related crimes and stuff like that. So what makes the U.S. unique is the gang activity, right? The southern border of the United States is usually the hotspot for crime. You've got drugs, you've got, the cartels, you've got gangs, and a lot of this contributes to a lot of those gun statistics. So it's not as cut and dry as saying just, easier access to guns equals more violence, especially when you consider the reverse effect, where people who live in very violent societies or cities or whatever buy more guns to protect themselves, right? It's not as clear cut as saying you just have more guns in the area. There is actually the reverse effect, which is people in very violent areas tend to buy more guns. So that I think there's a very good study, I'll have to find it,
right,
that actually looked at that actually looked at the causation. One is not necessarily the other,
Guns.
Yeah, guns are awesome, man. And I have to make a comment. I have a friend of mine who lives in Canada, and she's totally bought into the SJW and just left-wing propaganda. I will have it noted that no person in the NRA, which is the National Rifle Association in the United States, that is the big lobby for gun advocacy, Second Amendment rights in the United States, no person in the NRA has ever been convicted of any kind of gun-related incident or crime. In fact, if it is that you want gun safety and you want, responsible gun ownership, not the propaganda of no guns, you want more people registered with the NRA, because that is probably
the most shown. A lot of NRA members are actually, they're very safe. They're very smart with handling guns. There was that one shooting with the church.
Yeah.
An NRA member subdued the shooter.
Correct. So if demonizing the NRA is the most asinine thing that you could possibly think of. Now, I agree they are a lobbying group and they have their interests, but if you're not going to get rid of guns, then what you want is very responsible gun ownership, and that happens to be a lot of members of the NRA.
Do you really think the NRA as a whole really wants to have some sort of a PR nightmare of having one of their members commit a mass shooting?
Now, it could happen. I'm not saying it can't happen.
Oh, no, it could definitely happen. But do you think out of just how organizations want to be presented to the public, don't you think they
Correct.
want to be the ones that are like the safest with guns? I mean,
Correct.
if you had like the other NRA, the nuclear, well, I shouldn't say, the NNA, the National Nuclear Association, that is advocating for nuclear arms to the teeth for all nations around the world,
Right.
regardless of and because they think that is the ultimate deterrent to uh, the entire planet being decimated.
Mutually assured destruction.
So we'll call it, the Mad Association, whatever you want to call it. Let's say, do
Right.
you really think they're going to be the ones that are going to be like, all right, we should be bombing people like right now? Because that would not be in their best interest. So I think definitely that's a little bit overboard, but I think in the same way, the NRA is not going to just bring in a whole bunch of members that are just going to be a bunch of whack jobs that are going to shoot up schools, hospitals, and nursing homes all across the country tomorrow.
Exactly.
They're going to be like, hey, we're the ones that are for guns, but we want them to be safe too. Because I mean, who's really going to be for killing people?
I mean, and it is a community, right? They look out for each other, and they would probably be the first ones to spot if somebody is going over the edge.
And the thing is, too, is that people are like, oh, no, the NRA is supposed to be a terrorist organization, even though they have zero history of gun violence among their members. But Antifa, no, that's an anti-fascist group, and they should not be labeled a terrorist group, even though they beat the shit out of people at protests and throw bike locks at people's heads.
I saw some kid pepper sprayed a bunch of people and then got his ass kicked. And he was like, what's going on? You're pepper spraying, innocent bystanders, and then you worry why people are kicking your ass. Like, how stupid do you really have to be? I mean, I think they kind of took it a little too far because it is a young kid and stuff like that. But yeah, it's still retarded, So
exactly.
what's another one? So we've done more guns, more violence, the gun show loophole, and I think we touched on the very fact that the idea that legislation is going to stop any of this.
Guns. I mean, there's also the issue of like gun safes, like kids getting a hold of guns.
Sure.
I don't know if there's really much to really address on that because it comes down to, well, if you really want guns to be protection, why are you putting them in gun safes? Because that's going to take time to access the guns. So then people like try to find the happy medium, but then kids get a hold of guns and shoot themselves. And it's like, well, okay, is that the gun's fault or is that the people's fault?
Correct.
A lot of these arguments tend to throw out the idea of personal responsibility. Here we are.
Kids are out there just rushing to get guns,
and they think, well, and then in that case, they think it's the gun's fault, when in reality, it's the parents' fault.
Sure.
So you really want to dive down into this thought process, and you're going to be like, so you believe it is the gun's fault because personal responsibility, that's too much to put on a person. Human virtue doesn't humans are not just good people, so we got to blame the guns. Because throw out personal responsibility, throw out human virtue. Here's where I'm going with this. We will throw out human virtue when it comes to personal responsibility issues that directly correlate to personal responsibility, like guns in the home,
Correct.
People get shot. You're just not being safe. You're being dumb. But we will believe in human virtue when it comes to socialism.
Correct. I was about to say, like, you can look at the whole migrant crisis, and I'm just being real. The migrant crisis in Europe has greatly affected the crime and acts of terrorism and all these other things, right? Now, if that's what you're going to do, if you're going to advocate for this sort of thing, and you're willing to accept that the new normal is terrorism in London and, trucks of peace every so often, in the name of humanity, like, just not looking like a bigoted xenophobe by accepting this, right? That tends to be the left argument, at least out here in Europe. If you're willing to accept that a certain portion of this population is going to try and kill you, and that's an acceptable risk, and you're willing to accept that, you must also be willing to accept that people, a certain portion of the gun-owning population, are going to be stupid. And they're going to do shit. And they're going to shoot themselves and shoot their balls off and, certain things like that. You're willing to extend that courtesy for the migrants and sometimes illegal aliens, but you're not willing to accept any kind of responsibility on the part of gun owners being stupid. And this is the big hypocrisy that's going on. Right. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say for people who make these kinds of arguments. People make choices, and sometimes those choices are dumb. Unless you want to bubble wrap the entire world, you're going to have to put up with some people just being stupid. And not to mention, accidents just happen. I know there was a tragic incident of, I think, a very young girl. She was shooting at a range and stuff like that. And I think she shot her instructor or something along those lines. Terrible thing. Right. Yeah, accidents happen. Even, who is it? John McCain or somebody shot somebody in the face? No,
Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney shot his good friend in the face while hunting. Guns fault, right? No, shit happens, man. Even with everything. Driving cars, sometimes we make food that we put too much salt in. I mean, in every spectrum, we have to allow. Yeah, it's the salt's fault. I can't spell, but fucking keyboard can't spell. I mean,
Well, okay, autocorrect, you can actually blame that.
But yeah, I mean, nobody wants to take responsibility. And just the sad reality is we live in a world where people do dumb shit. And unfortunately, that's going to have some fallout. Now, before we kind of close up on this, what do you think about the media? Going back to the notoriety thing. And I'm of two minds about this, but it's an interesting question. So, okay, the young boy in this Florida shooting kind of made up his mind that he was going to be a school shooter and all this other stuff. Okay.
Right.
What would you say to the media not publishing the name of these school shooters? Basically denying them the notoriety and stuff like that associated with these shootings. If they survive.
On one hand, that's the smart thing to do. Don't give them the attention they want. Just say, there was a school shooting, people died, horrible thing.
Yeah.
Not like, I mean, obviously not cut and dry and just insensitive, but be like, this is a real thing.
Yeah.
However, from a standpoint, just looking at it from the angle of the interest of the media, they always want to get the ratings. They always want to get the views. You got to put the name in.
I mean, it could be a policy. I think it could be a policy.
I mean, I guess in the interest of trying to put out as much information as they can know.
Yeah. I mean, it could be leaked, of course. And, like if the students, for instance, knew who the person was, you can't really contain that kind of thing on social media. Everybody's going to say, oh, look, Jimmy just came out and shot up the place. And nobody named Jimmy. I'm just using that as an example. But I thought it was a very interesting point. I mean, they try to do that out here, but they do it with terrorist activity, right? Which is not the same. Terrorists don't necessarily care for notoriety. They're using violence.
Yeah, that's the difference. Is you have the ones that I mean, and then how do you really know? Did they do it for notoriety? Are they just fucked up in the head? I mean,
yeah, we still don't know what happened with the Vegas.
And then what happens? I mean, in your case, you were saying in the UK they'll try to cover it up because it's a terrorist. Because I think that would be the woke thing to do. You can't say it's a brown man. You can't say it's a Muslim. You can't say it's an Arab.
You say Asian. All these Asians are out here causing trouble.
No, you just say a man.
Yeah, they say. Oh no, they say Asian. They say Asian. Asians are like the biggest crime statistic out here. That's actually what they do.
Huh. Asians?
Asians. They call them Asians.
I guess they technically are.
And yeah, I mean, I suppose, right? Yeah, the acid attacks comes basically, that's a very cultural thing in Pakistan, for instance.
Asians.
Technically Asians. Yeah. So that's what they say, the Asians.
Speaking of Asians.
Yeah, you got a big announcement on that. This is a good talk, man. We didn't even address the articles. I had some good ones, man.
Oh, we're going to talk about some other stuff too. But so, yeah, I mentioned at the beginning of the stream that we'll be having some little changes. Brooke and I will still be doing our stream Thursdays at 11 o'clock Central Time, being that that's the good time that works for both of us. That's just, for both of us being on opposite side, well, different sides of the world. He's out there and
I'm 5 hours ahead, I think.
6 hours.
No, more than that. 6 hours, yeah.
6 hours ahead. So it's not too far off. He's like halfway between me and like Taiwan or something. But yeah, we'll be doing this as well as I've been talking to a few different people about being guests on the show. I know we've mentioned this a few times. Some people are dropping out. Some people are coming through. So tonight, 8 o'clock Central Time in the U.S., Minnesota time. I will be interviewing Shane and Nicolette of Hapa Supremacy. Now it's not
Hapa Supremacy. My God, what is that? Is this an alt-right group?
Exactly. They are a couple of libertarians who are what is known as Hapa, which I just learned. I know I'm going to keep saying this. I just learned this word. Hapa is a term, a Hawaiian word used to refer to as usually mixed or sort of half of a certain heritage. So in this case, Hapa is mainly describing half Asians. So half Chinese, half Korean, half Japanese, even half Filipino, or just half Asian, a mixture of the other ones. For example, so Shane is half Korean, Nicolette is quarter Filipino, quarter Chinese, and half white.
Right.
So
like a hafu in Japanese.
Hafu is mainly the Japanese ethnicity, though.
I think so. I mean, it's probably the same translation.
Anyways, so they have made their channel called Hapa Supremacy. And
it is alt-right, isn't it?
It is. No. They're it's similar to what we do. They basically they do some live streams. They've done a live stream, I think, with some libertarian candidates in where they are, which is they're actually in Texas. So we know, people know this. So they're in Texas. They're actually a couple, which is kind of interesting.
Cool.
Two half Asians that are a couple. And they do some videos on different articles, but they do a lot of streams with other liberty-minded kind of people, a lot of libertarians, and they're kind of what I describe as someone who's more into the Libertarian Party and sort of the goings-on within that, as well as a lot of as the principle, staying within the principles of libertarianism. Whereas myself, I try to focus more on sort of current events. Mainstream media, what they're covering there, as well as a few conservative alternative media sources like Louder with Crowder, Ben Shapiro.
Sargon of Akkad.
Yeah, Libertarian Party is just such a mess for me, and I don't get too much into it.
It's a lot different out here because it's a very, very small party. Like I said, I went to the convention, so I'll do a video about.
Are you saying? So what you're saying is you're a minority?
No, they're really great people out here, and they take themselves more seriously as a party, I think.
Yeah, out here we're starting to they're getting a little dip of party politics, which is why I don't like dealing with it. There's definitely some hero worship. There's been a couple people that I've dealt with that have said, you need to support so and so because, for all they've done in the name of liberty, and I'm like, yeah, I think he's a great guy, but. Do I have to support him?
Right.
Why do I have to? Just because, I didn't have to vote for Gary Johnson. I wanted to vote for him.
Right.
And the Libertarian Party is, by the way, has kind of thrown him under the bus. Well, kind of swept him aside because he didn't win. And, he's not that libertarian. It's like the thing. We talked about this too. The thing about Gary Johnson was he was the most electable person. And he was going to make a step in liberty for changes. He wasn't going to just gut the entire government overnight.
Correct.
He was going to take steps towards a more libertarian-leaning sort of government, type of government. And the guy that's going to come through and just be all about like, I'm going to I'm going to abolish the IRS, the Department of Education. I'm going to reduce the power of the executive down to the bare minimum. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to write executive orders into action to basically undo all the other executive orders still in effect. All this stuff. It's like no one's going to elect a person like that because they're going to think they're crazy.
Ironically, Ted Cruz was probably the closest to that.
Right. I like Ted Cruz.
I did. I mean, he was actually my favorite for the Republicans. And he wanted to abolish the Department of Commerce, education, all these things. Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, great. But we need someone that's going to make gradual change because that's how our government kind of is. You can make radical change if you want to completely destabilize the way things are. Sure. But it's probably best in a sense of a republic, which takes time, is make steps. Take small steps. Then people start liking those steps. Then you move on. I'm just gonna quickly, anyways. But yeah, the HAPA supremacy. I'll be interviewing them tonight. We'll actually be talking about HAPA issues. Sort of the state of the community known as the HAPA community, the half Asians that I would fall into. I didn't even know there was such a community, but.
I guess I don't qualify because I'm like less than half Asian, right?
Yeah, you don't count. You're too white.
I'm too white. And I'm 1/10 Nigerian. Don't give up on my Nigerian ancestry.
Exactly. So we're going to be talking about some of the things. I'm going to have to do a little reading up on the HAPA subreddit to see what kind of cancer is in there because these people are so fucked up that they're oppressed even though they're not. They're Asian and they're white. Asian. They're half Asian and they're white. So, I mean, one side is telling the other side to build a railroad. But yeah. But no, like back up real quick. I wanted to, because you were talking about gaming. I wanted to kind of slip this in there. You've seen like Steam, like the different games they have.
Sure.
Have you heard of this one called Democracy 3?
No. I think I did play Democracy 2, though.
I played Democracy 3. So I tried creating a libertarian paradise.
It'll go to shit.
Oh, it goes to shit. Because you start legalizing everything and you start cutting taxes. So all the poor people and all the rich people, all the socialists, all the unionists, all the workers, everyone hates you. And then you start the threat level of conservative value, Christian value organizations start coming against you because you're not instituting any sort of rules. So they want, so all the Christian groups want to assassinate you. All the poor people hate you, and you don't get elected.
Dang, I might have to check that out. And I'm the worst gamer there is. I'm still playing games from the 90s, so.
So the only way I made it work was I had to tax and spend, where I had a very minor surplus, no debt, but I just tax and spend the shit out of everything. I had to do like clean energy subsidies, like state housing. I can't like take guns away from police because if I take guns away from the police, a problem starts happening where you have vigilante mobs in neighborhoods. And they don't like that because they're saying like, oh, because vigilante mobs are literally beheading criminals in the streets.
I'll check it out. That might be interesting.
So, yeah, I'll have to show you the because now I have. Yeah, it's on Steam. I have an 89.
Yeah.
I have an 89% approval rating, but I spend and tax the shit out of people.
Oh dang.
Anyways, thanks everyone for joining us on the stream and watching. I know there weren't actually any viewers, but definitely we'll be getting views after we're done here. But yeah, join us tonight at 8 o'clock for the talk with HAPA Supremacy about Asians and half Asian issues, as well as just a little bit of talking about libertarian stuff as well. Once again, check us out on Thursdays at 11 if you want to watch us live. Or else every week or every other week, depending on our schedules, we will be streaming. Also, hopefully we're having more guests in the future, but those will be reserved for other times as well. So Thanks for watching, guys. You can like, comment, subscribe to my channel as well as Brook's channel. All the links in the info will be below, as well as some of the articles we referred to today. So thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.